of creation, revelation after revelation. I'm the rejecter, you're the elector. I'm the rejector, you're the elector. Yes, on the Kawthar, who's giving water? Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Haidar, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla. तेरा रजब की बज़्म सजाई, खूब हुई फिर मदह सराई। इश्क तेरा दरवेश बनाए, इश्क तेरा बख्शे दानाई। खूब विला का जाम पिया था, फिर भी नशे में मैं नहीं डोला। अली अली मौला, अली अली मौला, अली अली मौला, हैदर मौला, अली अली मौला, अली अली मौला, Ali, Ali, Mawla. Who opened up the door of Khaybar? Who was the door to the city but Haydar? Who raised the flag high? Who was the savior? Who was the first with the prophet in prayer? Only one man protected Rasul, the others ran for their lives just like fools. Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Haidar, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla. अली अली मौला, हैदर मौला। तूने नमाज़े इश्क सिखाई, तूने हमें तौहीद बताई। कौन बयां कर पाएगा मौला तेरी फजीलत तेरी बढ़ाई। पढ़ने लगा वो तेरा कसीदा जब भी कभी कुरान को खोला। अली अली मौला, अली अली मौला, अली अली मौला, हैदर मौला, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla. In the valley he commanded Musa, in the valley he commanded Musa, enter the valley but take your shoes off. Maryam came to the house with Isa, but they were kindly denied from a visa. See for Haydar, who was the chosen, the Kaaba split like Musa's ocean. Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Haydar, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Haidar, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Haidar, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Ali, Ali, Mawla, Haidar, Mawla. Flahman salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you very much for that beautiful recitation. Brothers and sisters, our main talk today is by Shaykh Arif Abdul Hussain. Please welcome with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Shaykh Arif Abdul Hussain is the founder and director of Al-Mahdi Institute in Birmingham. He has been at the forefront of developing and delivering advanced Islamic studies for over 2 decades, tailored towards training students capable of addressing the needs of contemporary societies. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Indeed, there's no. Sorry, did I say the wrong one? Asadallah yamana wa yamakum. Sorry. بميلاد السعيد لمولانا أمير المؤمنين عليه الصلاة والسلام. Most of the time you're doing recitation without thinking, right? You're on autopilot. So. And I think this talk is going to be on autopilot as well. Our mind is going to be somewhere else. There's no denying that there was no one superior to Mullah Ali Salamullah alayhi. It's a fact. No one should deny. It's very wrong. Leave aside the grand Sahaba with their contributions and their sacrifices. It would be very, very difficult, although I do not want to be audacious and say something that might be inconsistent with our theology. It would be very difficult to compare after the blessed Prophet of Allah. It would be very difficult to even compare others, grand saints of God and apostles of God against this man, Ali ibn Abi Talib, by looking at the way he himself was. He was a class in his own self, a superior brand. There's no denying. His universality appeals to humanity at large. He wasn't confined to a time or an era or to a people or to a sect. He's truly a universal person, and in due time people will realize that. And there's no denying that he is a wasila to bring out the best of our humanity and for us to ascend to the threshold of divinity through his example and through his spiritual being and through being related to him in his wilaya, which is a fatherly wilaya and tender, gentle, loving of Amirul Mu'mineen. However, I want to discuss certain points here that I feel are very, very pertinent, and Mahfil Ali offers such a platform where we can discuss these ideas and people don't get perturbed. The things that we are witnessing about Imam Ali Salamullah alayhi and the tension that is caused through Imam Ali. Now it's amazing, and I'm going to build a little bit of a prelude. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most embracing, is he or is he not? He is for one and all. He is as much the God of Iblis as he is the God of the Prophet Muhammad, is he or is he not? He is as much the God of Imam Hussein as he is of Yazid, as much the God of Imam Ali as he is of Muawiyah, is he or is he not? He is Pharaoh's God as well, right? So Allah should be that point of unity and conversion for one and all. There's nothing more universal, more pure, more beautiful, more untarnished than God. Yet God has been made the point of division. Has he or is he not? You worship Allah, you worship Jehovah, you worship such and such. So God, who is the binding force, the parent of all parents, the good beyond all good, the light of all lights, the love of all love, the most universal of all, has been made a point of division. So today we say to people that maybe it is not God who is the point of division, but it is your misunderstanding of what God means that is causing divisions in your mind in the name of God. Would you agree to that? Imam Ali is a most embracing figure, like his great Habib, the Blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Blessed Prophet is a very universal figure. Every Muslim belongs to the Blessed Prophet Muhammad. Imam Ali has the same sort of a stature after the Blessed Prophet Muhammad. Every one of them who call themselves Muslims belong to Ali equally, or ought to belong to Ali Salamullah alayhi equally. But the fact that Imam Ali has become a great point of division shows that something has gone wrong somewhere. The people who are cursing others who do not believe in Imam Ali are not really people who follow Imam Ali. And the people who are cursing those who love Imam Ali are not people who have understood Imam Ali similarly. So there are certain things we need to get right within our minds. One of the problems as I go into this is our emotional attachment. When we are attached to something, we find it very, very difficult to become rational, to think clearly. We become very emotive. If I were to say that the Blessed Prophet Muhammad did not speak in his cradle, you would all agree, right? But you would all find it very offensive if I were to say, well, then in that respect, Isa was better than Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wouldn't you get offended? Because I have said something like that. Yes? Now, I'll say something else because I'm finding it quite a lot of fun discussing like this. You see, we would say that the Prophet Muhammad was the best of all humanity, wouldn't we? But the naively best of humanity is misinterpreted by us. We tend to think that he might have been the best cricketer if he was around, or the fastest rally driver had he been around, or the strongest person, right? That's what we feel, naively. The Wahi used to come to the Blessed Prophet, and Jibreel used to come in the form of the most handsome man. So immediately the minds of the lovers of Imam Ali would go to this conclusion that Jibreel would come in the form of Imam Ali, but he didn't. He came in the form of the most handsome person of the time, and that wasn't Imam Ali according to that riwayah. Does that mean then that we get offended? There is something that we need to clarify in our minds about our thinking and the way we think. We need to distance ourselves emotionally somewhat and try and understand things for what they are. Being the best of God's creature does not mean having the best nose or the best voice or being most handsome or being the fastest at running or anything of the sort. Being the best of God's creatures means being most God-centric, my favorite word. Being most endowed with the light of God. That's what it means, nothing else. So now the problem comes when we come to Imam Ali about Khilafa and who was the first Khalifa and who was the legitimate Khalifa and who was not. And then we have other problems such as Bay'ah, so on and so forth. So straight off, and I think I've mentioned or alluded to these sort of debates previously in this center, that Khilafa and Imama are two distinct offices. Khilafa is to do with governance of the people. Imama is a bestowal of God. They can both come in one place or they can exist or coexist in two different people simultaneously. It's not a strange notion. The Israelite prophets or the Jewish prophets were prophets, but the kings were other than the prophets. We used to have prophets and we used to have kings. They were distinct offices amongst the Israelites. Never did anybody say that this king who is the Khalifa and the ruler was better than the prophet. There were two different things altogether. Khilafa is to do with people and governance over bodies. And imama is that godly bestowal in which a person is commissioned to provide a godly example and lead people to their inner calling and fulfillment of their humanity. Khilafa can be given by people and Khilafa can be taken by people. An evidence of this is that Imam Hassan Salamullah alayhi contended against Muawiyah and he said, the people of Kufa have done my bay'ah. It was well known that the people of Kufa at that point was the center and they would elect or select or give bay'ah to the next Khalifa. Imam Hassan never made this argument that I am the Imam or the son of Imam Ali and hence I am the Khalifa divinely appointed. He said, no, the people have appointed me as a Khalifa. But he doesn't talk about his imama. That is something told by the Prophet. Al-Hasan wal-Hussein imaman qama aw qa'ada. These two are imam, whether they stand or whether they sit, or stand in revolt or sit and accept somebody else's rule. There are two imams. Similarly, Imam Sadiq. When the Bani Abbas came, the first person they offered the Khilafah to was Imam Sadiq. Imam Sadiq refused. Now, had Imama and Khilafa been one and the same thing, Imam Sadiq would not have been in a position to refuse Khilafa. Khilafa is given by people and Khilafa is taken by people in that sense. And it is naive to think that a person can become a Khalifa without people wanting that person to be the Khalifa. Now, yes, there is all of this debate that the Prophet took the right from the people to appoint a Khalifa, which is valid at Ghadir. He did. He took the right to appoint his Khalifa and he said, this Ali is your Mawla after me. But then people went against that. They done wrong. They made a wrong choice. But nonetheless, the Khilafah was established in another person. And Imamat existed in another person. Now comes this confusion in the minds of the followers of Imam Ali. Well, then he could not have done bay'ah of Khalifa Abu Bakr. Now, if you look at the hadith of the Imam regarding the 12 Imams, occultation, was it Imam Bakr or Imam Sadiq? One of them said that there is none amongst us, the Imams, but that we have bay'ah upon us, and therefore God has kept the 12, will keep the 12th one in occultation, so he will not have the bay'ah of anybody restraining him. So we have this notion that bay'ah means that they are pledging allegiance to somebody else as a divine authority. No, that's not the meaning of bay'ah at all. Bay'ah merely meant that there is a leader and I will not mount opposition to that leader for as long as that person is the leader. That's about it. That's only thing that bay'ah meant, nothing else. Bay'ah does not mean that that person to whom I'm giving allegiance is a divinely appointed guide or that they can give Sharia. It only meant that this person is the head of the community and for so long as I'm in his bay'ah, I will not mount opposition. And evidence of this is the khutbah of Imam Ali Salamullah alayhi when he talks about Talha and Zubair. He criticizes them and says they did my bay'ah and then they went away and revolted against me. Because by the conditions of bay'ah, the person who does bay'ah is not allowed to revolt against the Khalifa or the person to whom he has done bay'ah to. Otherwise, bay'ah does not mean anything more than that. Now, the Muslim simple-minded sort of interpretations of bay'ah might be different to this, but that is exactly what bay'ah meant. It does not mean anything else. Now, we find ample evidence of this. We often hear the narration, don't we, that Imam Hussein Salamullah alayhi, on the night of Ashura, he said, I take the restrictions of bay'ah away from you, you may flee for your lives. Bay'ah meant that if that Khalifa fights, you have to fight with him, alongside him. You cannot oppose him. Those were the restraints of bay'ah. Now this bay'ah, if the Imams say that all of us have bay'ah, it's not something that should perturb us or make us feel offended. It was just the way in which things were happening at that point. Now Imam Hassan, in those stipulations with Muawiyah, he did not do bay'ah of Muawiyah, but he stipulated that the only time I will accept a truce is when Muawiyah adheres to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger of God. So at that point, the Khalifa's role is confined to the Sharia given by the Blessed Prophet, and they cannot venture outside the confines of that remit of judging by the book and the Sunnah of the Blessed Prophet. So if under those circumstances you give bay'ah, it does not mean you're upholding that person as a divine authority. You're only saying that this person is a political authority, and that's about it. Now, it would be very, very naive to think that bay'ah would work without people wanting the Khalifa. And Imam Ali gestures at this again and again. When the Blessed Prophet came, the people of Makkah could not give him the prophethood, neither could they take the prophethood away from him. All they could do was to give him the reins of authority over their lives for him to govern, which they decided not to. So the Prophet was ineffective in Makkah. Can you see that? But when he went to Medina, the people of Medina decided to hand over the reins of their lives and governance to the Blessed Prophet. So here the Prophet was both a blessed prophet appointed by God and a person who was a physical authority over the state of Medina upon that small community. Had the people of Medina not given him this authority, he would have lacked that authority but still been the prophet. Since in Makkah he was a prophet, but for 13 years of his missionary role in Makkah, he did not have authority. But in Medina, he established his authority. What I'm trying to say here is that there is a distinction, and that distinction is very, very clear. That Khilafah and authority is given by people, taken away by people. Wilaya, prophethood and imama is given by God through divine appointment, and it's taken away by God. Nothing to do with the people. So you can have an imam who is not a khalifa. You can have an imam who is a khalifa. So Imam Ali is an imam, but he's not a khalifa for the first 25 years. Al-Hassan is an imam. For 4 years he's also a khalifa. Al-Hussein is not a khalifa. And after Al-Hussein, they are not khulafa. They are imams. Unless, of course, if somebody wants to use the word khalifa in the sense of the one divinely appointed by God, which therefore means that khalifa here means imam. It's another word for imam. It's synonymous for the word imam. So here, what we see is that Khilafa and Imama are two distinct offices. They may come in one person or they may not, and they can exist side by side. If the Sunnis and the Shias can possibly get that right, then in that case, I think a lot of tensions can be diffused. That historically, Khalifa Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman were the first three Khalifa. Historically, Imam Ali was the fourth Khalifa. And Imam Ali was the Imam. Nonetheless, both sides accept he was the Imam. Both sides accept that he was the fourth Khalifa legitimately. And the other three were Khalifas nonetheless, who, whether you like it or not, were Khulafa. Now, when somebody says, well, they were illegitimate Khalifa, then you might want to ask, well, how is it illegitimate? Do you mean that they were not the best and the most qualified for that position? In which case, yes, we agree. But if you mean they were not legitimate in the sense that their Khilafah did not work, well then, the history bears witness otherwise, that they sat on the seat of Khilafah and they governed. They were governing. So what does illegitimacy of Khilafah mean? They were not Imams, they were not the best of people, they made huge mistakes, they might have done a lot of good things as well, as Imam Hussein says, that I am grieved that they have taken what was rightfully ours, but they tried to do good things, and for that I pray for them. And I pray for my forgiveness and their forgiveness. This is Imam Hussein saying it. So when we say that there is illegitimacy to Khilafah, then I would ask, well, Khilafah as in what? That their Khilafah did not work? It worked. Now, I'll give an example here which you have heard from me previously, but it will emphasize the point nonetheless. That Mr. Trump, we know, or we hear, or we witnessed how he came and became the president. Now we all know he played games, hacking of Hillary's. I'm not saying Mr. Trump has done that, by the way, because I don't want to level accusations against him. Sometimes he does make sense. He does say things that are reasonable, like about coronavirus. He said maybe it's too hyped up. I don't know. He makes more sense there. Anyway, now he became the president. Will you say he is an illegitimate president? I will ask, do you mean he is less qualified than anybody else? In which case I agree. Do you feel he is the worst president we've had? I'll say yes, I agree. Maybe he is the worst. But when you say he is an illegitimate president, then I will say then, of course, the Constitution should not allow him to be in that position. The fact that he is the president and he will be historically seen as a president and we address him as Mr. President shows that he is the president. He might not be the best of people around, might not be the most competent one, the most eligible one. Maybe he played games or twisted arms to get that position. Maybe he did all of that, but the fact is he's a president. And history will bear witness that he was a president no matter what. Nobody will say he wasn't and you can just take his name out. At most you can say wasn't the best of them. Yes, he played tricks and he got there and whatever, but you can't say he wasn't the president. Similarly, we can't say the first three Khulafa were not Khalifa. That statement cannot be made. I have nothing to lose, don't worry. Salawat. Now, undeniably, if Imam Ali was given the Khilafah, we would have seen a very different model of Islam than the one we are witnessing today. But there is a naivety in the minds of the Shia. What they assert is that had Imam Ali been the Khalifa, there would have been no divisions within Islam. Would you agree to that assertion? Just nod or shake your heads. Yeah? I'm just going to nod on your behalf then. But I will ask you to review history. The people who took Imam Ali as the first Imam and as the righteous Khalifa, the Shia, by the time of the sixth Imam, we have three prominent groups. There were many other groups before that, but three prominent ones that have survived. Those who are going to become Shia Ithnashri, the Shia Ismaili, and the Shia Bohras, that later on, and the Zaydis. Bohras and Ismaili split later on, and the Zaydis. Three prominent groups still exist. It's naive thinking to say that had Imam Ali been accepted as the first Khalifa, there would not have been any division in Islam, is in itself an inaccurate understanding of what's happened. For us to have differences of opinion, different ways of interpreting things is a part and parcel of being human. There will always be plurality and variety. The only problem is we've not understood how to manage plurality and variety. And that's why there were always different factions and warring against each other and killing each other. But the very fact that the Shia Ithna Ashari and Shia Ismaili and Shia Zaydi coexisted by the time of Imam Sadiq and have remained till this day shows the falsity of the claim that there would not have been any divisions in Islam subsequent to Imam Ali had he been accepted as the first Khalifa. It's an impossibility within humanity, at least for now. Inshallah, we will come to that stage where we can learn to understand things a bit better. But undeniably, had Imam Ali Salamullah alayhi become the first Khalifa, we would have seen a very different understanding of Islam. One of the things we see with Khalifa Umar and expansion of the Muslims and the Muslim Empire was that this was expansion for the sake of gaining land, conquering. Although he wasn't that bad. I mean, when the Muslims went into Jerusalem, they allowed the Jews to re-enter Jerusalem when they were banished by the Christians for centuries. They were banished by the Christians. Well, for many years, decades maybe, if not century. So they were re-allowed. And Omar just placed jizya upon them and said, life, business as usual. So they weren't that bad either. But this expansion that was happening was bringing in so many people that were just becoming Muslims without understanding the message of Islam. Had Imam Ali been the Khalifa, his attitude would have been very, very different. He was not concerned with expanding Islamic territories. He was like his brother, the Blessed Prophet. He was all about educating people, enlightening people so that the people could come and tend towards God. Had that been the attitude of the Prophet to expand, he would have never tolerated the people of the book. Look at the Quran when it's in Makkah, the revelation. Within the scope of the believers are the Jews and the Christians. When you come to Medina, they are being given paradise again and again. The Madinian verses give paradise to the Jews and the Christians and praising them and their love for the truth, so on and so forth. Marry their women and eat their food and so on and so forth. Had the Prophet had that attitude of expanding Islam upon the heads of the people and draw them towards Islam without them understanding, the first thing he would have done would have been to say, well, you guys need to become Muslims. On the contrary, he says, remain Christians and Jews, but come to us so that we together can worship one God in the name of Allah. You can be Jews, you can be Christians, you can be Sabians, you can be whatever. Let us worship one God. He wasn't interested in forceful conversion nor expansion. The Khulafa did not forcefully convert people to Islam, but nonetheless, when you expand your culture and your ideas, people are going to be drawn into it. The calamities that we witness in Islam, from Muawiyah onwards, a lot of them are due to this rapid expansion of Islam. That people were becoming Muslims and they did not know what they were coming into. They had the same sentiments, mentalities. Everything was the same. The label had changed to Islam. That's about it. They weren't cultured in Islam. That's why Imam Ali Salamullah alayhi would often lament and say, where is the godly example of the Sahaba of the Prophet within you, O people of Kufa? He would often lament and say that you people have not emulated the example of the Blessed Prophet and his Sahaba. So had Imam Ali become the Khalifa, he would have had a very different outlook. So the Quran says, like Raha fi din, there is no coercion in religion. I do not even believe that Imam Ali would have enforced prayers and fasts. He would have said, look, this is good for you to do. It is between, worship is between you and your God. These laws that we have, that the person who doesn't pray namaz and is a Muslim, cut them up or kill them, or, you know the fiqh laws. I don't need to take you through them. I don't think he would have had that attitude. There is no coercion. That is the standard that the Quran sets in accordance with the human nature. What is the end game for God anyway? What does God want? I mean, have we ever paused and thought that 8 billion people on the face of this earth, does he only want us to bow and prostrate and go around the black house and fast and that's it? I mean, God, what do you gain out of all of this anyway? And you've created this beautiful earth, all the species, you've put in so much work, and this is all you want from us. Doesn't make sense, does it? God's purpose can only be one. As he says, إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, save that they may worship me. This worship, this obedience, this service that God wants is in accordance with acknowledgement of God. He needs us to recognize him and to allow the godliness that is dormant within us to come to its fruition and its fullness, so that he may marvel at his own example and take pride and observe his own splendor in another. What else can God want? Doesn't he say he is ghani, needless? God, if you're needless, then a little sajda will not do anything for you anyway. I mean, you can't even locate this earth in Milky Way, let alone the observable universe. It's nowhere to be found. God cannot have this sort of a petty goal in mind from humanity, can he? Does it make sense to anybody that God can have such a small objective from this wonderful creation known as the human being? There cannot be coercion. Imam Ali's government would have been one that allowed people to encounter God, to recognize him, to surrender to him willfully, and then to grow in godliness. That is the sort of world Imam Ali would have been creating, the world that we are tasked to create at present. Think about it, the examples of Imam Ali. When the Khariji opposed him and he said, I will not dig the trench or build the road, they came to Imam Ali, his Sahaba, and they said, he's opposing your authority, you're the Khalifa. He said, fine, give him some task that he is comfortable with. Let him do whatever he feels happy to do. That was his attitude. They would swear at him how wonderfully the Kafir speaks. People like Kambar and Malik Ashtar would threaten The Khariji, Imam Ali would say, look, he's sworn at me, it's my right to swear back at him or forgive him. That would have been his Khilafah, a very moral, spiritual Khilafah. A Khilafah in which he would have brought hearts closer to God, to the recognition of God, and reminded them of their true status of nobility from within. He would have been a successful role model in that sense. And that modelship is still available, that example is still available if we were to look at him carefully. That example does not die with the person. That example lives on. He would have increased people's liberty. He would have said, you are free people. He would not have coerced people nor restricted them. The only way humanity flows is when you give them freedom, acknowledge their freedom. He would have had respect for their humanity. I mean, he was a person who would say to people, if somebody has covered his own faults, you have no right to disclose them. You should cover them as well. I heard this from one of my teachers, that it's reported that somebody was condemned to death by stoning, a couple, for committing adultery. So he summoned the people and he said to them, come out at dawn to a place outside the town. They gathered. He gave an eloquent khutbah at daybreak. And he reminded people of God. And he then beseeched God to forgive him of his sins. Then people began to weep and sob. Then he said to them, and he said, now execute these people. The people went away. They just left. They said, we have no right. If God is so merciful and we are so sinful, and if God is covering our faults and forgiving us, what right do we have to stone another? When he saw that everybody had gone, Imam Ali said, let them be free, for there is nobody to execute the command. This is the sort of person he was. He would not have ruled with the strictness of an iron fist governance. His policies were mellow, gentle, human-friendly. Imagine in his instruction to the tax collector that I narrated last time when I was here, he said, and when you bring the zakat back to me, make sure you do not separate the mother from the child in terms of the camel and the animals. He said, make sure you don't separate them, for that would be an injustice. Take them through green pastures so they can eat. Do not whip them. Do not hasten them or rush them. They are the belongings of God. Imagine what sort of a mindset he had and what sort of a man he was. And his utmost respect for the Muslims and the non-Muslims. You hear that story that a Jewish man was begging, and he said, what is this? And they said, he's a Jew. And obviously the commentators say he said, what is this, not who is this? He wasn't concerned with the status or the labeling. He said, what is this state? You use him when you need him in his youth, and now you discard him. The Baytul Mal will sustain him. When Muawiyah's forces broke the truce and they transgressed upon the lands under Imam Ali's control, there was a Jewish woman who complained that in the Khilafah of Ali, this is what is happening to me. He went and gave such a passionate khutbah that during my Khilafah, people are complaining that Ali is Amirul Mu'mineen and we are faced with such injustices. He said, even if you people are not mobilized to go and combat this evil known as Muawiyah, I, at this ripe old age with my white beard, shall wear my belt and tighten it and unsheathe my sword and go and defend the helpless and the defenseless. This was a Jewish woman. So his understanding would have been very, very different. So people said the Khalifa's role is to enact and to enforce the law of God. But I ask, what does that mean? Pray, fast, do this, do that. What does law of God mean anyway? Can you ever force upon people the law of God? Think about this. Law of God is to be taken on wholesomely before it can work. There's a huge misunderstanding about what is the law of God. God does not teach how to transact. God merely says, be just. Do not be exploitive. As for the modes of transactions, they already pre-existed the Blessed Prophet. He came and told them, pray, be God mindful, be righteous, take little, give more. So I ask, when we say within an Islamic government we have to enforce the law of God, what do you mean by enforcing the law of God? Making people pray namaz and their hearts are totally averse from God altogether? Is that what law of God is supposed to do? Never in history have the limbs been more in conformity with the law of God and hearts been more distant from God. At least that is what I am finding. The very fact that the mosques are empty, doesn't that say something? I'm not talking about the coronavirus, obviously. The mosques are shut. I'm going to make a comment here, right? I can't hold it inside myself. Normally, at the times of difficulty and tragedy, the world comes to a standstill. The doors of the places of worship are opened. With coronavirus, the world is going on. Normally, the mosques are shut. It's a historical one, this one. We'll have to write it down somewhere. You don't see my sarcasm, do you, Salwat? I will restrain myself. So law of God is not supposed to be enforced if it's the spiritual law. It's supposed to be explained. People are supposed to be enlightened. People are supposed to be drawn to God inwardly. The outward prayer and fast is a very natural outcome of it. The inward being is supposed to be drawn towards God. And that happens through a godly example. The majority of the things that have gone wrong with Islam is that within the system of Khulafa, the first ones, they were very strict. Khalifa Umar was very, very strict. What happened was that the forms of devotions were emphasized, but the spirit of devotion was abandoned. The whole rationale for them taking Khilafah away was a formal rationale, not a spiritual one. That the Quraysh will not have Prophethood and Khilafah in the same household. It will not work. But Khilafah was never there to govern the bodies. It was there to govern the minds and hearts, a divine Khilafah. They got it wrong in the very first instance. As legitimate as it might have been, they got it wrong. And I think the Islamic systems that we have now have also similarly got it wrong. You don't enforce the law of God. Law of God is only that spirituality. We are supposed to morally bring people and spiritually lure people into the folds of divinity and godliness. That's how it works. Another misconception that we have is that Imam Ali and the Khulafa were always at loggerheads. That's not true. There were a lot of misgivings and grievances, yes, but by and large, life went on as normal. The very fact that Imam Ali married the widow of Abu Bakr, and Khalifa Abu Bakr married the widow of Ja'far Tayyar, so on and so forth. There were cordial relations. The very fact that Imam Ali raises the children of Abu Bakr in his own lap. Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, who was his right arm, and Kulthum, who he nurtured as his own daughter, to the extent that when Umar died, he did not let her complete the iddah in Umar's house. He brought her back, contrary to the law that me and you understand. There were cordial relations. I'm not an historian, at least not one who can claim himself to be an historian. But from the books of fiqh that our ulama deem as authoritative, look at the cordiality that exists between Imam Ali and Khalifa Abu Bakr, Imam Ali, Khalifa Umar, Imam Ali and Uthman. We find this in the book of fiqh, especially in Diyat and other sort of chapters, the blood money and so on and so forth, and retributions. We always find that Abu Bakr would ask or Umar would ask, the Ansar and the Muhajirun, and then they would ask Abul Hassan, what is your view? And whatever Abul Hassan would say, Imam Ali, they would say, well, follow Abul Hassan. Omar would often ask Imam Ali, well, what is your view? And he would overrule the Ansar and the Muhajirin. And on many occasions, when Omar did not ask Imam Ali would send word, Omar, you're doing wrong here. And Omar would say, well, fine, whatever he is saying, do that. They were not contending against him at all. They were saying, yeah, he is the champion. He's the most superior out of all of us. Who can argue? Ali Salamullah alayhi knows the best. So there was a lot of cordiality there as well. There was a lot of humor between them. There were light-hearted moments between them. There was, of course, grief. There was sadness. There was all of that issue about fadak and so on and so forth. But you have to live life as well. You have to get along, work together. One instance comes to mind actually, in which a thief was brought to Khalifa Umar and he said, cut his left hand off. And then he stole again. So he said, now his right foot. Then he stole again. So Khalifa Umar, as per the instructions, says, cut his right hand off. Imam Ali said, no, don't do that. Now Umar could have argued that it says in the Quran, فَقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا, cut their hands off, there's no other punishment. Imam Ali said, no, but I feel embarrassed that this man has needs. He needs to eat and drink and clean himself. How will he attend to his own needs if you cut his other arm off or hand off? So Umar said, what should we do? He said, confine him. Confine him. But don't cut his hand off because he will be left without any means. And Umar said, that's perfectly fine. But the example is a phenomenal one that Imam Ali Salamullah is not going by the Quranic sentiment of cut the hands off. He's saying, no, he will be left without any means to see to his needs. I come to the final sort of a point. The appeal in Imam Ali Salamullah is his godliness, are his virtues. His godliness and his virtues are recognized by us deep within ourselves. Why? Because we have those virtues we ourselves. We can only recognize the good in another when we have good within ourselves. If we are appealed by the moral and the spiritual character of Ali, then that means we are moral and spiritual. We venerate this great man. Why? Because he was brave. Brave in what? As a bandit? No, brave in the way of the truth. And that is what we have within ourselves. We respect him for his truthfulness, for his sense of justice, for his humility in front of God. That shows that godliness is within us, that is attracting us to him. But then I would like to make a point, and I've made this on several occasions, that the person who respects Musa, ask him, why do you respect Musa? Will he say because he was a Jew and no more? Or he will say no, because Musa was very brave, was very just, was very sincere, truthful and humble to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh, so you respect Musa for the same qualities we respect Ali, I say. Turn to the people of Ram. My cough is normal, you know that, right? I often cough, you know. You ask them, why do you venerate Ram? He was a thief. No, that's not the reason. Well, why? Because he was truthful, he was godly, he was sincere, he was humble, he was just. So you respect Ram for all the things we respect Imam Ali for, and all the things the Jews respect Moses for, I see. Go to the Sikhs and ask them about Guru Nanak. Go to the Buddhists and ask them about the grand Buddha. Go to the Christians, ask them about Isa and the disciples of Isa. When you come and examine your findings, you will say, oh, wait a minute. We are placing different beautiful faces to the divine, same divine truth that is spread in all of them and that is within us. And that is the end of my analysis. The veneration of Ali Salamullah alayhi is because of the same godliness that is manifested in all these creatures of God and that is dormant in all of us. The end game has always been for us to bring to the fore that hidden Ali. I'm going to use these words. Don't get angry. The hidden Guru Nanak. The hidden Ram. I deliberately have done that. The hidden Prophet. The hidden Musa and Ibrahim. To bring them out. And that would have been the end that Imam Ali would have been working towards. Not conquering lands and forcing people into sajdas and rukus and fasting. No. His task would have been to gently, through his divine example, bring people to the same threshold of divinity. For there cannot be success for God in anything else that we do but for the realization of our godliness. God does not need anything, he is saying. He does not need anything. The only thing he wants is for us to give ourselves over to him and to become like him. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much. We have some time for questions if there are any.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
You mentioned if we love Imam Ali sallallahu alayhi and love his virtue, we are moral and spiritual. So, and you mentioned how Imam Ali and so on. I was thinking about this hadith, "Man arfa nafsu faqad arfa rabbahu." He who knows himself knows his Lord. So we agree that Imam Ali Islam manifests the virtue, the asma of Allah, such as Al-Kareem, Ar-Rahman, etc., etc. So how can you go about doing that more and really ennoble these, really manifest these characters that Imam Ali Islam had? Because that will help us spiritually and morally. Thank you.
Sure. So one of the things about wilaya that is so potent in the spiritual journey is that it is through the agency of love. What love does is, it makes the lover forget their own identity and become like the beloved. When they become like the beloved, the falsity of their own pretentious being fades away. And the truth of God that is dormant within it, through the agency of that love, shows itself and brings itself to the fore. So when we are in love with God, we dissolve ourselves in terms of strip away our identity that I am none of these things that I think I am. And from that nothingness emerges the image of God. The same is the case with the Blessed Prophet and Imam Ali. Because God is so transcendent and people find it very difficult to fall in love with God, we fall in love with a human example that represents that divinity to us in a way that we can relate. When we fall in love with that human example, the love should be so intense that we begin to melt away in that beloved. And then the qualities of the beloved begin to shine through us. So a lover of Ali will not be able to hate another person, will be able to forgive, will be charitable, will be altruistic, will be brave, will be truthful, will be humble, will be sincere. Because at that point, the identity that makes me would be fading away and his self would be emerging. Yeah? So it's that agency of love and wilaya. So one is by reflection, by looking as a philosopher, by looking at our own identity, that I am not the DNA, I am not my social circumstances, I am not my status, I am not my gender. Philosophical inquiry. My anger is due to these fluctuations of hormones inside me. My hunger is due to the stomach. None of this is me. My religion is conveniently the one of my cradle. Even our religion is not ours. Philosophical inquiry. The other one is to embark on the remembrance of Allah, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that dhikr has this ability to pacify the inner being, both the kingdom of the mind, it arrests from thinking, and the kingdom of the heart, it stops from fluctuating emotions and fleeting emotions.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted some clarification. It's just a simple question. So when you were talking about bay'ah, now you said bay'ah means that you're not willing to give the person like leadership of the people, and you'll kind of like fight against them.
So bay'ah means that I will not mount opposition against you, basically.
Okay. So now when we come
And
to
I will not go against your authority, political authority.
political authority. Okay. So now when we come to Imam Hussein and he didn't want to give bay'ah to Yazid, so was he saying
So then
he,
that allowed him to revolt.
so he was going to revolt against his political status as
Yes,
well?
yes.
So it wasn't just an issue he had with his Islamic kind of leadership. He wanted to
But at that point, the notion of Islam and Khilafa was somewhat conflated in the minds of the people. It was. Because the fact that today the things that Khalifas introduced have acquired the status of Islam shows that there was a confusion. But at that point, at the time of Imam Ali and Al-Hassan, you can see quite distinct that Khilafah was one thing, Islam was another thing.
okay, so then by Imam Hussein's time it had become more
It
kind
was a
of
bit more
connected.
conflated, but Imam Hussein did not offer allegiance because they would have criticized him that, well, you paid allegiance and now you've come out in revolt.
Okay.
So Imam Hassan opted for the truce that was imposed upon him, but in that he made it clear that Muawiyah will rule in accordance with the book of God and the conduct of the Blessed Prophet. Imam Ali, Salamullah alayhi, when he was offered Khilafah after the death of Khalifa Umar, he said he would govern by the book of God and the Sunnah of the Prophet and not the Sunnah of the Shaykhain. And that's why it was given to Uthman. But Khalif was supposed to be confined to ruling in accordance with the book of God and the Sunnah of the Prophet. So they were just executing and governing, not novelly introducing anything in Islam. Whereas we have the notion of an Imam being an accurate divine interpreter of the will of God, right? So that's a bit different.
Okay. All right.
Any more questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Is it necessary for us to attend wafat or of any imam? And then also there is a bayan coming of Imam Hussein to cry. Because in other majlises which we are going, they don't cry. They understand what the lecturer is saying, and they are in a mourning state. But we, as Khoja, or many centers of Khoja, they make us cry. So
No, it's not. It's not necessary. It's become a culture. It's become a culture, but it's not necessary. So you don't have to have the Gham Bayan, and we don't have to bring Imam Hussein's Bayan at the end. But it's become our culture, and we uphold it. And at times, it is actually very good to cry for Imam Hussein because it allows us to find ease. And crying is good. Tragedies as well are good because when we cry it out, the burden of the soul lightens. So it is good. It has many, many positive sort of things associated with it as well. But at the level of, is it necessary or not? Obviously it's not.
We'll take one final question if there is.
Assalamu alaikum. I get a slight sense from the way in which you talk about the relationship between Imam Ali and the Khulafa at the time that maybe there's something you're not saying, that in terms of in the way in which Imam Ali appreciated their company, maybe there's something that we miss by sort of blanking out or ruling out that part of our history. Do you think that we would be enriched at all by getting a better understanding or having a better appreciation of figures who we might have a tendency or a reflex towards sort of like cancelling? I guess?
Absolutely, absolutely. We are given a narrative from the pulpit that has evolved over the past 1,400 years or 1,200 years, and that is not factual or accurate. It shapes our minds. I mean, yes, there is accuracy to an extent, but not wholly accurate. It shapes our minds, and we are missing out on a lot. So today, if we ask our audience, Bani Umayyah, they will say, La'anallah Bani Umayyah, Qatiba. Qatiba in Zarat Ashura means each and every individual. Yet, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was one of the finest men ever to walk on the face of this earth. Yeah, Bani Umayyah. Muawiyah bin Yazid cried for what Yazid did. And he did not take up the position of Khilafah or was put to that as is speculated. Bani Abbas, they're all lanati. You know? That was the glorious phase of Islam. Yeah? So we will not be inclined towards looking at history and celebrating the achievements of Islam because Bani Abbas are all lanati. We're missing out on a lot. The other thing we need to understand is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designates all of His wonderful prophets as humans. Prophet Muhammad says, Ana basharum mislukum. Innama ana bashar. I'm only a human like you. Wahi has come to me. In another place they say, oh Muhammad, fly up to the sky, bring a book, and then the book has to be done this and that. Hal kuntu illa basharan rasula. Am I but a mortal who is a messenger? I can't do all these things. We are taking their humanness away from them. If Blessed Prophet Muhammad is human, then by priority nobody else is beyond humanity. And if they are humans, then human frailties accompany them. We are failing to see all of this. And within being human is that at some point you have to come to some understanding, a working relationship with other people, no matter what they have done to you. That's exactly what's happened. And yes, you're right. We need to be far more open, far more objective, far more critical, and get things right. And we're missing out on a lot.
Thank you very much. I know there are more questions, but as time of Salah is upon us, we will stop there. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.